Okay, picking up with tempo and dynamics. So if you haven't done so already, please open up the lecture slides, which can be found in Canvas in the Files section, and find the ones labeled tempo and dynamics and music and words, right? Because they're all in the same PDF file. Okay, so let's start off here on slide number 2. So what is tempo? So tempo refers to the rate of speed or pace of the music, right? Some music is fast, some music is slow, some music is really fast, some music is really slow, and a lot of music is kind of right in the middle somewhere. Tempo can also describe, maybe more scientifically, how fast the beats occur, right? Remember the idea of beat back in chapter 2 when we talked about rhythm? Remember, beat is that regularly occurring pulse, right? If you go back and listen to Speak to Me by Pink Floyd, notice that, if we start about a minute and minute and 15 seconds, that the beat, I figured out earlier, is about 64 beats per minute. So if I open up my metronome and I set my metronome to 64 beats per minute, here's my beat, and if I let this go for 1 minute, I will get 64 of these beats, right? All right, we're not going to sit here for a minute and do that. You can try that on your own if you want later. But Speak to Me, it's about right? It's about 64 beats per minute. That's the tempo. All right? It's how fast these beats are occurring. Right? If I even put my metronome to it, you can hear it. Right? There's my beat. There's my tempo. Okay. So back to our slide number 2. So the tempo also can carry emotional implications, right? A very fast, brisk tempo might be associated with kind of vigor and gaiety, right? Whereas a really slow tempo might be associated with feelings of despair, right? Or grief, something like that, or sadness in some way. Tempo, in addition to emotional implications, also draws physical and psychological responses. If we listen to Presto, right? This is from Vivaldi's Four Seasons, right? This is from Summer, actually. He writes music to all the seasons, and this one's from Summer. If we start this video at about 8 minutes and 5 seconds, we'll notice presto means really fast, okay? And then just think about how you feel when you're really listening to this. I'm gonna play a little bit right here, just to kind of listen a little bit, but you should actually pull this video up yourself and listen to it with headphones so you have better audio quality. Right? Listening from my speaker through my microphone doesn't provide the best audio quality. So if you pull it up on your own, that'd be best. But just to kind of get a little idea here. already, right, it's really fast. It's very, I mean, just watching it, we see a violinist, and it's very physical. Already, I'm feeling like it's sort of moving me in a certain way, right? I feel personally maybe a little bit anxious listening to it because it's like, what's going to happen? This is really dramatic. And it's so fast. It's captivating. So check that out on your own. Watch that whole movement, Presto. It's only like a couple minutes, and it's really cool. It's by a composer from the 1700s named Antonio Vivaldi, right? He was from Italy. Okay, moving on to the next slide, slide number 3. Let's talk a little bit about tempo markings, right? So these tempo markings are in Italian, in the classical music world. We use a lot of Italian words to describe things about tempo and dynamics, right? There's a whole history behind that. We won't go into it. But here are some tempo markings. And by the way, you don't have to know all of these. You don't even have to know any of them, really, for this class. This class, Music as Culture, we're only going to talk about Western classical music a little bit. And so you don't really have to know these, but I just kind of want to talk about them a little bit to give you an idea of different kinds of tempo and how they affect emotional response. So if we look at the first one, we have grave, right? And grave is it's very, very slow, right? And it's associated with kind of a solemn, kind of serious mood. And on the other end of that, right, at the bottom we have presto. And presto means very fast, right? So that movement we were just listening to by Vivaldi from Summer, that's presto, right? And so that has certain emotional implications and draws certain physical responses, right? Which would be very different than grave, right? Just listen to how I'm even speaking. I'm saying grave, like it's so slow. It's kind of bringing me down. It's heavy, right? Whereas presto, I sort of, it's like, okay, we're awake now. I had my coffee. Let's go. And then we have different gradations kind of all in between that, right? If we see kind of in the middle, we have andante. Andante, it's kind of about a walking pace. And sort of a little faster than that, we'll have allegro, right? That's kind of fast, kind of cheerful, about 120 beats per minute, whereas andante, that's more about like around mid-90s beats per minute, right? It's about the tempo at which you walk, andante. So again, we don't really have to know all of these. I just kind of want to give you a little bit of an idea. I'm not going to put these on a quiz or anything like that or a test, so you don't have to know all of these. Okay, let's move on to slide number 4. Talk a little bit about markings that indicate a change of tempo within the same piece of music. And again, these are what Western classical musicians tend to use. So we're not really going to use these too much in this class, but just to kind of give you a little bit of an idea of, when I say that, I mean these are terms that Western classical musicians use. Accelerando, ritardando, a tempo, but musicians of other cultures use these ideas in their own music. But these are just terms that came up in the West, in Western classical music tradition. So first of all, accelerando means we're sort of getting faster in our music, whereas ritardando means we're kind of holding back. We're getting slower in our music. And a tempo means we return to the original pace. Let's listen a little bit to this waltz to illustrate these ideas. We kind of hear all three of these ideas occurring in quick succession. So we'll just listen to a little bit. Again, you should bring this up, pull up this clip on your own to really get better audio quality and listen to it. But just to kind of explain what's happening here. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So right there, right about the 9-second mark, we already have a retardando, right? We slowed down, right? We'll listen again, just like the first 10 seconds. So this is in triple meter, by the way. I'm counting in threes. And it's pretty quick, but then at that end, that little cadence, right, at the 9-second mark, it really there's a retardando there, right? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 2, 3. So see how I even slowed down my counting to stay with it. Listen a little bit more here. Let's see what happens. 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. Slowing down, retardando. 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Slowing down, retardando there, right? And then a tempo. Back to the original tempo. Little accelerando right there with that little scale. Okay, so again, pull this up on your own. See if you can listen to those accelerandos, those retardandos, those a tempos, right? Those little kind of, we're speeding up, accelerando, now we're slowing down a little bit at retardando, and then we're kind of getting back to the original pace, a tempo. All right, so check those out, and then pause this video, check those out, and then we'll move on to our next slide, number 5. Let's talk a little bit about dynamics. So dynamics describe the volume, meaning how loud or soft or quiet the music is played, right? And dynamics can affect our emotional response as well, right, as tempo. So a great example of a piece that has kind of a wide range of dynamics that kind of gets really loud and then gets really quiet and really kind of tears at our heartstrings is Elegy, right? By this is a piece by a Russian composer named Rachmaninoff, right? Sergei Rachmaninoff. Early, late 1800s, early 1900s composer. Mostly early 1900s. But Elegy is written for cello and piano, right? It's kind of a duet. And in this, all throughout, right, we really hear it's getting louder, and then it's getting quieter. And then it gets real quiet, and then it gets real loud. And sometimes they're pushing the tempo a little bit. There's a little bit of accelerando and retardando. So the performers are really playing with these ideas of dynamics and tempo all throughout. So pull up Elegy and listen to it, right? It's maybe 4 or 5 minutes long. All right. So then moving on here to slide number 6, talk a little bit more about tempo and dynamics. So composers include these ideas of tempo and dynamics by writing certain words and symbols into their music, right? When they're composing their music, they're writing, for example, if a composer writes the word allegro, right, at the beginning of their piece of music, as we see here on slide number 6, right? We see allegro con brio, right? It means allegro. Allegro refers to a certain tempo, right? We talked about a little bit earlier. it's about 120, maybe 130 beats per minute, kind of maybe a little quicker than that in that area. If we were to break it down to beats per minute. But it just means quick. So when Beethoven wrote his Symphony Number 5, he wanted this part, this opening part, right? This is our theme, the ba 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 from the Fifth Symphony that we talked about and kind of broke down when we talked about theme and thematic development and sequence and that stuff and motives. But he wants you to start this piece. He wants it to be quick, right? That's what he says, allegro. Also, we see a couple other symbols. We see this little arrow kind of pointing to the left on slide number 6. We see it to 2 Fs, right? And that means fortissimo, those 2 Fs. That means that Beethoven wrote that in there because he wants you to start this loud, right? Loud and fast. All right, but then shortly after the theme, we see an arrow pointing to the right. We see he wants you to all of a sudden, once we start kind of getting into the thematic development, he wants you to get real quiet, right? And that P, the letter P there, refers to the Italian word piano, which is an instrument, but it also means very quiet, right? So he wants you to start off kind of with a bang, really loud and fast, and then he wants you to get really quiet, but not to slow down, but to stay quiet, but also fast. All right, so that's just an example of how a composer might use tempo and dynamics in a musical score. And okay, we can move on to the last slide here. So although a composer may add markings like that, like fortissimo and piano and allegro, it's really up to the performers, right? And the conductors. They might change things here and there. Maybe just a little bit, maybe just a lot. Because the performer ultimately has the final say in how, in choosing a tempo or the dynamics that are best going to deliver the overall message of the music, right? I think Beethoven said about his Symphony Number 5 that opening theme, the ba 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 ba, so it's kind of like fate knocking at the door, right? And that's like the message of that music. And so it's up to it's ultimate, and he wrote in certain tempo and dynamics that he wants, but it's really up to the performers to choose those kind of ideas that really will best deliver that message of, perhaps in that case, fate knocking at your door. All right.